Hi, I'm Adam Bender with Eastmans Bowhunting Journal, and today we're going to go over 10 easy steps on how to build a killer arrow. The first step that we're going to go over is choosing your arrow. There's all kinds of different arrows out there today, from manufacturers to types of arrows to the material they're made out of. But the first thing you're going to want to do is determine what arrow is right for you. Head on over to Easton's website, and they actually have a chart that you can download on to figure out the exact arrow that you need. There's going to be two numbers that you're going to want to know: your draw length and your draw weight. Using these two numbers, you're going to be able to make a left-right comparison and draw a conclusion as to which range of arrows you can shoot. Easton's already mapped all this out. They've done all the science behind it. Now, granted, this only applies to Easton shafts, but it's going to help you. Say you're looking at another manufacturer, it's going to give you the proper arrow spine to look at. Now, what exactly is arrow spine? Arrow spine is something that a lot of guys overlook these days. You wouldn't believe how many people actually are shooting not properly spined arrows. To put it simply, the definition of arrow spine is how much an arrow flexes during flight. And you want your arrow to recover as fast as possible. Shooting an underspined arrow, it's going to take your arrow a longer time to recover out of the bow as it goes down towards your target, which is going to also affect your accuracy.
Once you've selected the proper arrow for your bow's draw length and draw weight, you want to mark where to cut these arrows. These shafts come at a predetermined length, and they're of course extra long, so you want to shorten them up by cutting them. But what you have to do is measure where you want to cut these so they're all the same exact length. To do that, you actually have to put one of these shafts in your bow, draw your bow back, have a buddy or someone else mark with a marker on the arrow where the proper clearance is on your bow. So the first thing we're going to do is Adam's going to put this shaft in his bow and draw it back. Now, everybody measures their arrows a little differently. Some guys want them to come right in front of the arrow rest. I like to always have mine in front of the riser. I want to make sure that no matter what happens, I'm going to get good clearance from my broadhead and not knock it off the string. If you cut your shaft short right in front of the rest here, if you have any variance, sometimes if you shoot a little different broadhead or something, you can hook a blade on this riser and it'll pop the arrow off the string, and that is no way to handle a bull elk coming in, is have pull back on a big bull and have the arrow pop off the string on you. So we're gonna have Adam draw it back here and get settled in just like he's gonna shoot. Of course, you don't want to stand in front of it when you mark it. I use a silver marker so it marks on the black nice and clearly, and we want to mark it just in front of this riser. So I give it just about 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch of clearance in front of that riser to make sure that that broadhead, there's no way that broadhead could get hooked on that riser and pull that arrow off that string. So go ahead, Adam, and let down. And now we know we have a good, accurate measurement. Now that we have the mark, this is our master arrow, and we'll go ahead and cut a dozen of these off exactly the same.
Okay, so now that we've determined that my arrow is 30 1/4 inches, I'm going to come down to the tape on the arrow saw, and I'm going to go to 30 1/4 inches. Lock it down, and then you'll want to double check your measurement against your mark. There is a gap where you cannot see. You're assuming that that's exactly 4 1/2 inches. Now, whether or not that's exactly right, we don't know. So when I line this up, I can see that when that blade rotates, it's going to cut off all of the silver mark. Make sure that this is tightened so it's not going to wiggle loose, because as you do 12 arrows in a row, it's going to want to wiggle loose, so make sure it's tight. So once you have your arrow saw locked down and in place, you're going to want to make sure that when you bring the arrow to the saw, you spin it in a backwards motion and push it through the blade. Another thing to pay close attention to on this is make sure that your nock is flush against the back wall the entire time you spin the arrow. If you have it pulled out and you slip, basically what's going to happen is you're going to have different arrow lengths. So make sure that the arrow is pushed all the way back against the wall, and as you bring the arrow to the saw, rotate it backwards until it's cut all the way through. All right, so now that we've determined the length that our shaft needs to be, cut it to that length, now it's actually time to start building the arrow. The first thing you're going to want to do is square the end. Now you do this because during the cutting process, the wheel of the saw can actually develop high and low spots in your arrow. That's why it's so important to spin the arrow backwards as you cut, so you develop as even as a cut as possible. The reason being is because you want that insert to flush up as perfect as possible to that arrow. If you have any high and low spots on any point of this, while it may look like your insert is sitting perfectly flush, it may not be. And where you're going to find out that it's not is when you go to spin test your arrows and see if they're true. So to take out any little imperfections, what you're going to want to do is get an arrow square. Probably the most readily available arrow square out there is made by G5. You can pick this up at any of your local sporting goods stores, and it actually works pretty slick. So all you do is you set your arrow square down, and you're going to bring the arrow flush to the end. Now it kind of sits in there and there's a little cradle. And what you do is you're going to rotate the arrow. And you can do this to basically eliminate any high and low spots that developed during the cutting process. This is completely flat, and in turn it's going to make any little burrs that might have happened when you cut, it's going to take those out. So I usually repeat this process for 10 or 15 seconds until I'm pretty positive that I've removed any burrs that might have happened while I cut the arrow. Another interesting little tip for the people that really want to take this seriously is to put the end of your arrow in the chuck of your power drill. Kind of will require 2 people on this, but the theory is that the faster you can spin this, which with my hands I can only spin it this fast, but with the power drill I can turn it a lot faster, and you're going to eliminate that much more and that much more even when it comes to the scoring process. That's just a little tip that a lot of guys who really go to the next level when it comes to arrow building will do. So after you've got the arrow squared using the squaring tool, basically all you need to do is take a Q-tip and a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and you're going to clean out the inside of the shaft. Carbon can develop down in there, little burrs, little sand shavings, and you don't want that stuff trapped in your arrow because once the insert goes in, it's not coming back out. So what I like to do is just get a pretty sopping wet. You'll want 2 Q-tips, or you can use both ends. And you basically just run this down the inside of the shaft and clean out any little bit. And you can see on there all of the carbon that would have been left in there had I not cleaned that out. Take the dry end, clean this out, and you're basically ready for the gluing process. Alright, so now that we've got our arrow squared, cleaned out, it's time for the insert. There's all type of glues out there. The one I like is the Eastman Bondall. It seems to work on all the different types of arrows and inserts that I've used. There's types of glues that you can melt and then put it on the insert and then they harden over time. There's 2-part epoxies. I prefer just the squeeze bottle ones based on the ease of use. So what you're going to want to do is hold the insert in your hand, and you're going to want to apply an even amount of glue to the back half of the insert. Now the reason you go on the back half is as you push this in, it's going to bring the glue forward. So once I have the glue applied, I'm going to put it into the arrow, and as I bring it forward, I'm going to spin around, and you can see that that glue is moving forward with the shaft. For the last step, bring it down to a hard surface, press tight, and just clean off the excess. One thing you want to make sure that you have is once these are set, you want to give these a good, they say a couple hours to rest before you go shoot them. That glue bonds very quickly, but never chance it. Always give your arrows proper time to set up before you shoot them.
Still looking to take that once-in-a-lifetime Western trophy? Eastman's Hunting and Bowhunting Journals are the #1 magazines for Western big game trophy hunters. Eastman's is the only big game hunting magazine engineered specifically for you, featuring entertaining Western hunting adventures, detailed equipment lists with head-to-head gear reviews, and species-specific tips and tactics. In the back of each subscriber issue, you'll find the exclusive Members Research section. We give you detailed statistical info, expert analysis, and advice on the hottest big game units. Act now. Subscribe to Eastman's Hunting or Bowhunting Journals, and we'll throw in our latest trophy hunting DVD absolutely free. Shipping and handling charges apply. Eastmans, getting you on track to your trophy. Get all this for less than the price of 6 rounds of ammo. Eastmans, your stories, your photos, your magazines. Call to subscribe or get it digitally now.